All right, welcome back to another AP Stats calculator tutorial. This information is going to cover the calculator information from Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. So this will cover comparing box plots from Chapter 4, and then from Chapter 5 we'll talk about finding percentiles from z-score, as well as finding the percent between two z-score values, and then finding z-score from percentile. So let's start with comparing two box plots from Chapter 4. All right, so to start off with, you're going to need to follow the instructions in the Chapter 3 calculator video for entering data into a list. So you can see here on my calculator, if I press Stat and then Enter, I can see my data that's already in my lists. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take this data and I'm going to make a graph that has both of these box plots in one single window. So the data you are comparing should be in List 1 and List 2. We're going to go ahead and press Second Stat Plot, which is up here in the top left. And we're going to go ahead and plot each one of our box plots. I'll put the first one in plot 1 and the second one in plot 2. So we're going to go into plot 1. We're going to turn it to on. We are going to select a box plot with outliers as our graph. And then we are going to use our X list as list 1. All right, so that's good there. Now we can go back into the same stat plot, except go down to plot number 2. Press Enter. We're going to turn plot number 2 to on. We're going to select our type of plot as, again, box plot with outliers. And now this box plot is going to be using data found in list number 2. So to change this list, go down and highlight the list, press Second List, so Second List, go down to List 2, and press Enter. All right, so now I have both of my plots, 1 and 2, turned on with my two different data sets for each of those plots. So now I'm going to go to Graph, and you can see here that my window is already set up for both types of graphs. If you want to adjust your window, you can either adjust your window by pressing on Window and then changing your X min or max and Y min or max. Or another quick way to adjust your window is to press the Zoom button up top. And then there's a bunch of different ways you can adjust your window here. I find that the most effective way to adjust the window is to go down to Zoom Stat, which is option number 9. And if you click on that, your graph should be set up in a nice window. All right, and you can see here I have two different box plots graphed on a single graph. And it looks like there's room for maybe a few more as well. Okay, so that is from Chapter 4, comparing box plots. Let's go ahead and move on to Chapter 5 information. So all of this next Chapter 5 information is essentially using your calculator to do what you would have looked up on the AP Stats formula sheet with the z-score table. So table A on the formula sheet. This is how we can use that table in our calculator instead of having to look up those values. So let's go ahead and exit out of your graph. And we want to find the percent between two values. So let's take our SAT example and say we want to find the percent of students who had an SAT score between 550 and 670. And again, the mean is 500 and the standard deviation is 100. So two different ways to do this, but you're going to go ahead and press second distribution, which is right below the down arrow, and you're going to select normal CDF. So normal CDF will take a z-score and give you a percentile. So there's two ways to do this. When you click normal CDF, if you have already calculated the z-scores, you simply need to type your lower z-score, so in this case 0.5, comma, your highest z-score. So I can see I've already calculated my z-scores. It goes from 0.5 to 1.7. And then I'm going to press enter. Now, depending on what calculator you have, your inputs might look a little bit different. But you're going to enter in your z-scores, and when you press enter, you should get a proportion of 0.2639. or 26.4%, which again means that 26.4% of students had a score between 550 and 670. Now, let's say you didn't have a chance to calculate the z-scores. You can use normal PDF or normal CDF without the z-scores as long as you have the mean and standard deviation. So if we did not want to use the z-scores, we could type the normal CDF like this. So my lower score, 550, comma my highest score, 670. So I want to be between 550 and 670, but now I also have to include the mean and standard deviation. So the mean was 500 and the standard deviation was 100. And I press enter, and you should get the exact same value, except the first one was already calculated into z-scores, and the second one was just your raw numbers. But they both come out with 26.4%. So that is the percentage between two values. All right, so let's go ahead and see if we can find the percentile of a single value. So now we just want to find the percent of students who scored below 650, which is a z-score of 1.5. So now we want to find just the percent below 650. So we're going to use the same normal CDF. So second distribution, select normal CDF, except now our lower boundary we are going to make extremely low. So our lower boundary we're going to make extremely low. So if we type in -1 second e to the 99, that means -1 with 99 zeros behind it. So that is an extremely low value. Essentially, we're calling that infinity. So that is our lower bound, and then our upper bound is simply our high z-score, which in this case is 1.5. So then I press enter, and I can see that 93.3% of people scored below 650 or a z-score of 1.5 on the SAT. And this is the same value that you would get if you looked up this z-score of 1.5 on your AP formula table A. Okay, and again, you can do this without calculating the z-score as well. So we're going to go back into normal CDF. We're going to make our lower boundary is still extremely small. So -1 e to the 99. But now we're going to use our actual SAT score, which is 650. And again, we have to include the mean and the standard deviation as well. So if we did not want to convert into z-scores first, we could type this all in as just your pure SAT score. And you can see that you still get that 93.3%. Okay, so that is the percentile, but below a single value. All right, let's clear that and let's try one more here, which is finding the z-score given the percentile. So instead of going from z-score to percentile, we're going to work backwards. And we're going to find the z-score from the percentile. So this one's pretty straightforward. Say I scored in the 43rd percentile on my SAT section. What was my z-score? So again, you're going to go into second distribution. This time you're going to select inv norm, which is the third option, which stands for inverse normal. So I'm going to click that. And all I need to type in is the area proportion that I'm looking for. So 43rd percentile would be 0.43. And don't worry about changing the mean or standard deviation for this. Just type in 0.43, enter, and that is your z-score for the 43rd percentile, -0.1764. So whatever your percentile is, simply enter that number, and this will give you the z-score for that percentile. All right, and that is all of the calculator information for chapters 4 and 5. Again, all that chapter 5 information will give you, will save you a lot of time in terms of looking up values on that z-score table on the AP test.